All right, so this is very high tech. Now I'm a big shot, big macher, as they say in the world of Judaism, and I have this headset so that it doesn't sound like terrible. Um, so what I want to do is I did in the Blender class that we have at our high school. Started to talk a bit about sculpting and showed people how to use the basic controls. And I did a video on the basics of just the controls of sculpting in Blender. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to sculpt something. And I'll probably get the basic form and then I'll continue it in the next day or two. And what I want to do is I want to finish the sculpture, have it be basically a sketch. It's a sketch. It's not like a finished model, but it's a sketch, and then do vertex color to color the sketch. So the whole thing should take, I don't know, maybe 2 hours or something like that in total, and I'll split it up into a couple of videos. But the thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do some kind of a goblin, and I have some pictures of some goblins. First two concepts by Rob Bliss, who's a really great illustrator, and he did a whole bunch of concepts for Harry Potter. And this is like Dobby from Harry Potter, the kind of house elf, and he designed that. And he designed a bunch of the the elves that, or not the elves, but the goblins that are at the bank in Gringotts, I think it's called Gringotts Bank. And then there's another sculpture here, which is from Barry Gower, who's a great makeup artist, and he did some very cool sculptures for the masks for those goblins in the bank. So there's obviously some kind of a similar lineage between these things, and I want it to be pretty nuts. It's not going to be. I mean, the mask here is meant to go over a person, so it's kind of in the human proportions. But this is going to be a lot more wacky than that, because basically it's just a kind of a demonstration of the principles of sculpture. So as I sculpt this thing, I'm going to talk about it, and I'm going to talk about sort of like the when you sculpt what you're looking for. So I came from a traditional sculpture background. I used to do special effects makeup, and so I started with regular clay sculptures, and I still do them. Um, well, there's one over there. If you can see that, it's an old man sculpture for something I'm doing. And basically, I kind of still have the same mentality for sculpting it digitally. And I'm not the only one. When you sculpt digitally, as you will see, and as you sculpt regularly with real clay, you still kind of do a bit of the same approach, which is starting with the basic large forms and getting smaller and smaller. So, not working on details until you have established the basic structures. And this is something you'll hear basically any good sculptor say and reiterate often is work on the large to small. And so what they mean is work on the larger primary shapes, which is going to be like the shape of the skull, the basic shape of the head. Then once those are established, start to go towards the secondary shapes, which is maybe more of the shape of the nose, the shape of the chin. And as those are established, then finally you'll go to those smaller details. But what you will see is that everyone who starts to sculpt or starts to sculpt digitally or physically starts with they're really interested in the little details. But the little details are kind of easy. It's the structure that is difficult and the structure which is more important. So you go from big to small. You build the house first and then you worry about the wallpaper. So we're gonna build the house. So right now I have Blender here. I'm going to enable my screencast keys. And there they are. And hopefully there they are. They're on now. Okay, so I'm on Blender and I'm going to do all of this sculpture as a voxel remesh kind of workflow, meaning that I'm not going to do this as a low poly model. I'm not going to extrude shapes and add edge loops. I'm going to do this in much more of a sculpting kind of mentality, a voxel remesh workflow. And I did a video, I think it was last night, on the principles of how you would do this, and I'm going to do this in the video. So let's not mess around. I'm going to add a sphere. So if I can start this, it would be nice. Shift A, I'm going to add a UV sphere. In this case, I'm not really worried about the topology because it's going to all be remeshed in like a few minutes. So first of all, let me put it on shade smooth. Here's my sphere. And I'm actually going to get really sort of this picture. Now, it's not going to look like any of these pictures. This is more just inspiration. Okay, So I'm going to go to the Sculpting tab, and first thing I'm going to do is turn on Symmetry. I'm going to turn on X Symmetry, so it's mirrored on these two on the X axis. So now as you'll see, if I go to this, it will pull out both sides. So I actually did something that I don't think I'm going to do. I'm going to go back here. Instead of having it be smooth, I'm actually going to keep it flat. And the reason I'm going to keep it flat is because when I sculpt this at this stage, I actually really want to see all of these edges. And you're going to see why. Basically, as I said, I'm going to start by really forming the basic shape of the skull. So I have it on G, grab, which is the move tool. And basically, I'm going to be using this a lot, this move tool. And I call it a move tool because in ZBrush, which is the program that I started with, it's called the move tool. And in Blender, it's called the grab tool. So I'm really just going to start with trying to establish the basic shape of the head. It has this guy is going to have sort of a roundish head. It's not going to be long like these guys. It's going to be more like a kind of a chubby head. And I'm bringing his chin out a little bit. And the reason why I'm keeping this rough like this is because I actually need to see these polygons. I'm going to try to use these polygons as they are for now to shape the basic shape of the mouth. So I kind of want to use the loops. Like I need to see the loops so I know where they are, so I can actually kind of basically push. What I'm going to do is push this down and basically establish sort of an upper lip, and then pull all these down. I'm going to smooth it a little bit. I have to take the smooth and put it way down because it's going to kill. If I put the strength right now, it'll just be way too harsh. So I'm putting the strength down a little bit. All right, back to my move tool, and I'm going to basically make like a frowny kind of a mouth. And then I'm going to take this and pull this up and make like sort of more of a pouty kind of a mouth. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that up. So what I want to do is make that the plane change for the lower lip. So I want to push this back and do more like that. So I have kind of the shape of a lower lip. And then I'm going to use this as the edge of my chin, and I'm going to pull it out. He's going to have kind of a recessed chin. Pull this down a little bit. Now you're going to see all the polygons are very, very, very stretched out, but I don't really care because I'm going to remesh this very soon. So this is a bit too wide. All right, this is obviously looks like kind of a pouty, long mouth. Maybe I'll make it more like that. Okay. All right, now I'm going to, actually I want his mouth to stick out a little bit more, his upper lip. I want his upper lip to be sticking out, so he has kind of like a much more prominent upper lip than lower lip. So I'll pull this back a little bit. So it's up, yeah, more like that. Okay. And then I'm gonna, now I have to kind of make like sort of some eye cavities, or not really eye cavities, but just areas where the eyes are going to be in. So it'll be, okay, before I continue, I have set up some hotkeys. This here is, I have made it my number 1. So if I press 1, for example, over here, if I press 1, it goes to that sculpt draw. To do this, if I right click and I write, if I did, in this case, I'll just remove the shortcut. I right click and I write assign shortcut. I press that button, and if I press 1 in this case, if there's nothing else assigned to 1, that will now assign it to that. So this one here is assigned to 2, and I'm actually going to assign this one here, clay strips. I'm going to do this, assign shortcut, I'm going to put that on 3. So now I have 1, 2, and 3. I don't really use the clay. And I have G for grab, and I have S for smooth, and the last one I'm going to put is called scrape. And so this one here, if I do this assign shortcut, I'll put 4. All right, now you're going to see that these are the 4 that I'm going to use a lot. So hold on, it's sculpt draw sharp, clay strips, Whoops. G for move, S for smooth, and then number 4, which is the scrape. And you'll see what that means when I use it in a second. All right, let's get back to this. So I'm going to first of all just kind of push this in a bit because his head should not be a ball. That doesn't make any sense. All right, he's going to have kind of a, this is the sort of the bottom of his jaw here. Pull this up a little bit. You're going to have kind of a recessed forehead also. And then I'm going to push in these eye cavities. What I'll do, just as a demonstration, is if I press M, that's mask. So I'm going to mask off this sort of area, and then I'm going to push it in with my grab tool, or actually I'll go to 1, and I will go to Control, and that will push it in. This is basically the draw tool, except for shrinking it in. Now, I can't do much because this is so incredibly low poly, but I can at least just, for now, just push that in. Go to my side view. Now what I want to do is I want to have this forehead kind of like a different plane here. All of this is going to get pulled back. This is going to get pulled back. That's going to get pulled back. Soon I'm going to do the basic shape of the eyes. But first I want to actually pull out this gigantic nose. So I'm going to do masking off this central area. Invert the mask. Actually, I'll mask this off too because I don't want to, oh, whoops. I don't want to get that pulled out. If I press Control, now that I'm on mask, I can undo the mask. So now I'm going to go to grab and just yank all of this way forward. And of course it looks ridiculous because I have so few polys. For anything, I'm going to move this a bit more like that. This is going to be a lot. Now, because I have so few polys, I'm actually going to do something that isn't just sculpting. I'm actually going to go and add one edge loop in the edge in this mode here. If I add an edge loop there, it's probably going to help me. An edge loop here, it's going to help me a bit. And maybe one over there, it'll help. And then I'll do the same thing on the other side. This is just so I can kind of keep pushing stuff. Maybe one there. Can I do it? Yeah. Okay, go back to my sculpting mode. And now at least, because I have those extra edge loops, I can pull the bottom of the nose out, which I didn't even have a bottom of the nose before. It was just like a sharp plane. So I'm going to smooth this a little bit. Okay. Okay, so now I can start to, he's going to have sort of sad eyes, I guess is a he. And I need a lot more strength here. Okay, so this should come to sort of, I don't want him to have a pig nose, so no. There we go. Like I said, of course, it looks totally ridiculous right now because there's just not a lot of polygons, but I don't care because the fact that there aren't a lot of polygons and that it's so low poly means that I can really do drastic changes by just moving like individual polygons. So I can kind of have a lot of control, even though I don't have a lot of precision. I have a lot of control. And it's like I'm basically shaping this thing out of rock or something like that now. So, and because there's no detail at all, because it's impossible to have detail because the polygons are so gigantic, that it's kind of forcing me to just take care of the most primary shapes here, and to figure out also what this is going to look like. So I'll make, I don't know if he should be mean or sort of sad looking. I guess I can figure that out as I'm going along. Clearly I'm making this up as I'm going along, but I do have some basic idea what I want. I want a recessed chin, and I want this whole nose part to be like way out, and I want him to have kind of small little eyes. All right. And to be a bit sort of chubby, like not like a super thin guy. So make the eyes should be smaller and kind of close together. Okay. Now I'm going to go to that brush number 1, and I'm going to just define the cheekbones a tiny bit. And I'm actually going to now inflate the hell out of the bottom part here, because I want them to kind of have, like I said, like sort of like be kind of like a bit of a chubby guy. Then I'm going to pull the chin up like that, so that like he has more of a double chin. And I don't want the eyes to be that high at all. They should be much lower in the face. That's pretty low, but yeah, kind of a wider face, wider head, I mean. Okay. Oh, that's better. Okay. Now, do I want this? Yeah, that's better if the forehead has a big plane change there. It will look better like that. Okay. Now I want to pull out some gigantic ears. So once again, I'm going to mask it. I'm going to go to here. Actually, if they're too far forward. So I will do Control, and I'll mask them off here. Still incredibly low poly. That's how I like it. Okay, now I'm going to go invert the mask. And once again, I'm going to make my brush really big, go from the top, sort of, and yank out, oh, can I do it? And yank out these crazy ears. And I'm going to push them, like angle them much more back. And I'm going to clear them. No, what I'll do for the mask is I'll just remove a little bit of the mask so I can continue to shape it. And pull all this back, push all this way up, smooth it a bit so it's not, so I have more, it's not quite as ridiculous. Oh, this has to go much more forward. And okay, so the ears are very big. Maybe, but also should have to be distinct from the rest of the head. So, and the way he drew them, they kind of sag down. I don't really like ears that sag down too much. I don't know why. I just don't really like that in kind of ear design. So I won't make them sag down so much. Like by sagging down, I mean here they kind of sag down like that, and I don't really like those kind of ears. So first of all, I have to make sure that they're at the right angle. So once again, I'm going to push this whole thing a bit forward. You notice that I'm like really moving around this thing a lot. Like I'm not just keeping from the front view. I'm moving it upside down, up, like that. I can see it there, and I'm completely from the top. So I'm really moving the model around a lot as I'm doing this. So I can kind of see the three-dimensional view. I don't want to be looking at this just from the front because I'm not going to I want it to look interesting from all sides. So I'm looking at the profile. I'm making sure that the profile looks good. One good thing about having the very, very low poly mesh is that because of the way that the move tool works, you see that it highlights the vertices. So I can move the vertices like very precisely because I know exactly what I'm moving. And it's actually a little bit easier to do it like this in the sculpting mode than it is to do it in the regular mode, in the editing mode. So even for hard stuff, hard edge stuff, you can kind of bring it into the sculpting tab and do some of the moving around here because it's nice. It works very well. Okay, I'll move this a bit up. Once again, move the chin I want to move it. I don't want it to be that human. It still looks too human to me, so I want it to look more not human. Not inhuman, but just not human. Okay, and then this should probably be more in. And then this should also be, maybe it could be more out. Let's see, does it look better with them? It's pretty crazy, but it's okay. I'll make it more like that. Yeah, like very small eyes. And I'll push the mouth up a bit more. Okay. I want a kind of more of a bump on the top of the head. Okay. And then I'm going to inflate this part. I'm going to add a little bit of a depression here under the cheekbone. Even though he's a bit, kind of a bigger guy, you still have a depression here, even when you have a lot of, meat in the cheeks. Okay, so, and I am going to make him look not quite so sad. So to do that, I'm going to move that a little bit up. So he'll have a sad, and then it goes back down. So more like that. And the angle of his eyes shouldn't be that angled because it looks very weird. And then from the side, it should be a bit further down. More like that. And then this is hard to understand because it's so low poly. Okay. Now, okay, at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to voxel remesh it because I can't do much more at this level of, like no polygons. So now I have two choices. I could immediately go and remesh it. So I'll show you how I would do that. Let me just pull this out a little bit more. Okay, if I just do this, if I go to remesh and I press remesh, it is now set at 10 centimeters and I press remesh, that's what happens. So it's not enough. What I can do is by doing this, if I go into edit mode, first of all, and I actually select the whole thing, and we're going to see if this is going to help. If I subdivide it first a couple of times, so like maybe like that, and then let's see if it happens if I remesh it now. I don't know if it'll make any difference, but we'll see. Well, it's still way too low, but I'm going to change the resolution here, 0.015. That's better. Okay, so now I'm going to go into edit mode. Here's a little trick. I'm going to select the whole thing, and I'm just going to do like a smooth vertices a couple of times just to smooth it without having to do much. Okay, so now I'm back in sculpt mode. First thing you have to do is, now that there's so many voxels, so many polygons, the smooth brush has to be turned up because it's set at a point where it was working on these very low polygons and it was obliterating everything. But now it's not strong enough. So now I'm just basically smoothing everything, and you see that's why I didn't really do much before. I wasn't trying to make like any details. I was just, whoa, that was too much. I was just trying to get like a very basic shape so that I could then go and actually sculpt on it. Okay, so I'm just kind of smoothing this a little bit. I'm not going to go crazy with the smoothing. Okay, here it's very sharp looking. I'm just going to smooth the whole back here. Smooth the whole back. And I'll get back to that after. I'll smooth it a bit more, but I don't really care because I'm going to still be sculpting. And it's not like I'm not smoothing this for anything other than just because it looks weird. Okay, so now I'm going to actually start to sculpt this. So, okay, first of all, so I have kind of a structure, but it's a very, 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 very basic structure. And so now I'm going to have to start sort of working this. So let me figure out, first of all, smooth this a little bit. If I see that I have to have like sort of weird shapes like this here, you can see that this is very weird. I'm going to probably remesh it again. I'm going to just, okay, so hold on. Probably going to remesh this again. Let me just basically work on this a little bit for a minute or two and kind of get it to be a little bit further. So I'm just sculpting the nostril holes and the plane change here in the nose. Oh my God. Okay, so that's the smoothing was much too high. So I obliterated that. So I went back down to a reasonable amount. Okay, so now put this down. Okay. So first thing, I might as well start to kind of give some shape to these ears here. So first thing about ears is, well, these are very like gigantic ears, but they're still ears. And there's some basic anatomy in the ears. All right, there's the part on top. I can't see this part on top. Actually, I have a rubber ear. I can use that. Where's my rubber ear? Here we go. Here's a rubber ear. And we have this section over here, which is called the helix, I think. And that is the kind of ridge that goes sort of around the whole thing. And so that's what I'm going to sort of define here. So I'm just using the regular brush, and I'm going between so here I'm adding, smoothing a bit, and then with control subtracting. And I'm just trying to carve in basically the basic structure of an ear here. So I have to make the deepest part here, and I'm just continuously checking, and I'm moving it around and going on both sides, so I'm sure that this is actually, what it's supposed to look like. Here, where it's very sharp, as you can see, I'm actually going to inflate it. The inflate brush, which I just pressed I, is useful because it inflates everything on the normals. So it doesn't. So if you have something that looked like that before, it was a kind of a weird ridge. The inflate one, if I inflate and then smooth it back again, I can sometimes kind of fix it a little bit. Now I'm going to remesh everything anyway, but still. Let me continue to do this. I'm going to kind of make the ridge of the ear here, and then I'm going to go back here and really take this whole part in, so I can get that in there. Here's the second part where this has to be cut in. I'm doing this for the sake of this demonstration. I'm doing this with a mouse. I normally don't sculpt with a mouse. I normally sculpt with a tablet, but since this is for my class, I don't want to be, cheating. So I'm only using the stuff that they can use, or if you're watching it, that you can use. So I'm not trying to cheat. Because maybe some of you guys don't have a tablet, so I want to show you that it's no excuse, even without a tablet. Oh my God. You can still sculpt even if it's without a tablet. Okay. Okay, so now in the ear, this part, you can see that this part here goes into the ear. Right here, it goes down in there. So I'm sort of sculpting that. And I'm not going to do too much. I'm just trying to get some basic sense of the ear shape, because what you don't want to do when you sculpt is you don't want to go and finish some part when everything else is rough. You basically want to sculpt all the parts at the same level. So if one thing is, if it's rough, then you kind of keep it at the same level of detail for all parts of the sculpture, so that you're refining everything together. You're not going to finish one part and then go and sculpt the other part when one, you know, you don't want to have a finished set of ears and a completely unfinished head. You want everything to be sort of at the same pace. So I'm not going to spend that much longer on these ears, but I do want to just make sure that there's some kind of shape so it just doesn't look like pure crap. Yes, I said crap. What can I do? This is YouTube. Okay, I guess I can say crap on YouTube. I'm not cursing. It's just I say crap in class anyway, so I guess it's okay. But it's all for the good of education, which is true. Okay, and sometimes what I do is I'm kind of doing now is that I kind of get some shapes developed, and then I move them around because this isn't really what I want the ear to. Oops. I don't really want the ear to look like this. It looks just like sort of giant normal ears. But now at least I can move, now that there's some sort of shape, I can move it around and kind of see what even bigger. I want these. I can see how I want the ears to look in the head. And so I think I want them to be sort of coming right out of the head. Like, and will they look better if they sort of sag down like the way that Rob Bliss made them? I mean, if they're more pointy. Oh my. Oops. Oh, it's because the back, I made them I made the ridges so deep in the back that they kind of went right through. That's okay. Let's smooth it. The thing that is different when you do digital sculpture than traditional sculpture is that in traditional sculpture, you don't really smooth things all the time. You kind of keep the clay looking rough, and then in the end you smooth it. But in digital stuff, you kind of have to smooth it because you're dealing with polygons. And if you leave the polygons unsmooth completely, then you end up with these very kind of bad topology, which actually has a really big effect. With clay, you can keep it very, very rough and then only in the end smooth it. But polygons, unfortunately, you kind of have to smooth them as you're going to avoid really, big problems where there's like uneven polygons. You kind of have to smooth it, which is, it's funner when you don't have to smooth anything, but until the end. Okay, I'll go back to this here. Okay, that was way too harsh. Put that way down. And I'm undoing that. Other good thing about digital stuff is you can undo. And you can't do that in real life. Okay, before moving on, I want to have some kind of definition of some idea what the eyes are going to look like. So I said I wanted them to be kind of like that, where they kind of go up and then go back down. So first of all, I have to, oh yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to inflate this so I can see if I can smooth it a little bit. And I think I'm going to I'm just going to remesh this right away. And I can maybe get rid of this, inflate it, smooth it. Let's do it again. I just really want to get rid of those weird pulls. Aha, now they're gone. Okay, cool. Anything with that. Okay. Okay, so let's get back to this. And I'm using the regular brush to kind of figure out where the eye sockets are going to be. Then I will sculpt the basic form of the eyes after I figure out where the eye sockets are going to be. He kind of looks like the dad from Arrested Development now. He looks, whatever, what's his name, the actor? He looks like that guy who was from a great actor, a great comedian, who I don't remember what his name is, sadly, because he is a great. He was in the Gary Shandling show. Anyway, he looks like him now. Tabak, I think his name is. Okay, now his nostrils are way too wide. Or he looks a little bit like Rick Moranis from SCTV. And Ghostbusters fame. Oh, okay. Now I'm going just to carve the kind of double chin, except for that was set far too high. And it made a crazy ridge. Maybe I'll remember that guy's name at some point. Jeffrey Tambor is his name. It looks like, well, it doesn't so much anymore, but it did look like, it still kind of looks like Jeffrey Tambor. Although that's great, but I don't really want it to look like Jeffrey Tambor. So I'll have to change it so it doesn't look like Jeffrey Tambor. Not that he's not a great actor. He is. Fantastic comedian. All right, I'm going to go for now this is the scrape brush. The scrape brush, the purpose of the scrape brush is to define planes. And so you see here, what I'm doing is I'm almost like painting along this plane, and which is making, it was very sharp before, now it's making kind of like a defined plane, almost like if I took a flat tool like this. If I was sculpting this with clay, I'd take a flat tool and use it to define planes, flat planes. And that's kind of what this is using. That's kind of what this does. It's in ZBrush, this thing is kind of like the H polish brush, if you have any idea what ZBrush is. If you don't, well, I'm sorry. You missed out on a lot. ZBrush was it's a great program. It's the original sculpting program that started it all. Program by Ofer Anon, I think his name is. Israeli guy who sold the company recently after making a lot of money from this, and he did it out of a labor of love. From all accounts, Ofer, who's basically the guy who kind of invented digital sculpting and programmed the first program to really do that, he sold this company and he was like a mad scientist. So I don't know what he's doing now. I have no idea. Maybe he's going skiing. Well, if he lives in Israel, he's not going skiing, but maybe he is going, maybe he lives in Eilat now. And he's just hanging out on the beach all day. He deserves it. I hope so. Ofer, if you're there, you deserve it, man. Okay. So he still looks like Jeffrey Tambor, but I'm going to change that because I'm going to make him look slightly more devious. Okay. These are going to be like Steve Johnson eyebrows. Steve Johnson is a famous special effects makeup artist who is sort of retired. And he has sort of a distinct way of sculpting eyebrows and eyebrow ridges and stuff like that. He was a genius. Well, he still is. I guess he's still alive. He's young. He's young, a young man that decided, let me live my life instead of being in this crazy world of movies. Good choice, Steve. Good choice. Well done. Good idea. Okay, so what I do for the eyes in general is that I'm going to put actual eyeballs in, but before I do that, I'm going to kind of sketch them out first in just directly on the sculpture. So because you can't put eyeballs into something unless you know where the eyeballs are actually going to go. And so if I just took a bunch of, oh, whoops, I got my X. Interesting. I don't know what just happened there. Well, I'm going to show you something. Somehow I lost symmetry for a moment. No problem. I'm going to find symmetry. Let me show you something. Well, let me just finish this eye and then I'll show you. Well, finish is a big word, but let me kind of just get this eye sort of sketched out. I'm going to go to the clay build-up brush, whoa, which is great, but much, much, much too strong. And the clay build-up brush, let me just remember what it is. It's this. It basically does lumps of clay or strips of clay. It's actually called clay strips, not clay buildup. I'm going to put the tip roundness a little bit more so the tip, so it's not quite as square. So if I'll show you what I mean. I'll put it strong here. If I do it like this, it really does look like strips of clay. If I put the brush, the tip roundness a bit higher, let's see what happens. You see that it's softer. And it's kind of a little bit better for my purposes. I also don't want it to be that ridiculously high. So I'm just using it to kind of build up the eyelid part for my kind of a makeshift eyelids. And I have to go in here and make sure that the eyelids are protruding in the right way. Eyelids, you shouldn't be seeing this part because that part should be more recessed. So I'll put this, push this back. And I'll go back to my clay strips and make sure that, oh, that's not my clay strips. That's my clay strips. I forgot my shortcuts. It's very sad. Forget those shortcuts. Don't forget the shortcuts. Okay, now I'm going to just define the actual eyelid a little bit more. And I'm going to move it so it doesn't look like Peter Sellers or something. Still obviously ridiculously low poly, but again, that's kind of good because it's supposed to be low poly at this stage. And if this was a sculpture, you'd still be doing the rough shape. Okay, go down on my smoothing. And now I just want to symmetrize this for a second. Okay, go to edit mode. Now, notice I lost symmetry at some point. Just to be sure, I'm going to select the whole thing and I'm going to go to mesh, symmetrize. It'll take a second. And did it symmetrize it which way? So this is minus x to plus x. So that I think that is what I want. Oh no, actually that's what I want. Let's see. Huh. Okay, I'll just do it like that. Okay, now it's back to being symmetrical. And I'll continue defining this. And again, I'm not putting in eyes yet until I actually like this thing. Okay, first of all, I'm going to So, okay, let's get back to actually making shapes here. So I'll go back to this. I don't want to get to details and things like that yet. I'm going to carve out, again, under the eye socket. I'm going to put that up. And then the bag here should be a bit more out. And then I'm going to make this much larger and much softer. And start to define the jowl here. Yep, still looks like Jeffrey Tambor. But why not? Why not look like Jeffrey Tambor? Why doesn't everyone look like Jeffrey Tambor? I think we all should look. That was too much. We should all try to look and emulate Jeffrey Tambor because he is an award-winning actor, fine comedian, and a damn good-looking man. He's not just a comedian, and I think he's probably, probably a decent golfer. Seems like the kind of guy that would be a good golfer. I don't know if he's good at tipping in restaurants. I'm not sure. He might be. I'd like to think so. Okay, I'm gonna define these planes. Okay. Okay, I'm going to, I know it's a little bit too early for this, but still, I'm just going to define the basic planes of the, oh my gosh. That's not what I want to do. Now it looks like a thing that I don't want to say what it looks like, but it's a little bit phallic. So let's not do that. Okay. Build this up a little bit more. And pull it up a little bit more, pull it down actually, and pull this back like that. Okay, from the side, let's see. That's a very, very large nose. It makes me look like I have a small nose. And I have a very large nose. So if this makes me look like I have a small nose, that's a big nose, which is the intention. Intention is to have a very large nose. I also want the eyes to be a bit closer together so it doesn't look like a guy in a mask, you know, so that the proportions are not too human. Okay, I'll put that down like that. I don't want them to sag. It looks stupid if they sag. I'm just pushing these ears around so that until I like them, basically. Good thing about digital stuff is you can move things around until you like them. Whereas in real sculpture, or I know I keep saying real sculpture. I'm sorry for all the people that are offended by that, but I mean physical sculpture. You can push stuff around to a certain degree, but not that much. And at some point, it's easier to do pushing around in real sculpture. It's easier to do pushing around when you have wet water clay. When you're using water clay, wet clay, which is like the stuff that comes in the bags that some of you guys, even if you haven't ever sculpted with real clay, if you've in high school or whatever, you have the stuff, the big stuff in the big bags. Now that's water clay, and that's actually very pleasant stuff and fun to sculpt with because it's soft and you can push it around and you can actually be pretty intuitive. But in other types of clay, which is more what I use, the clay is very, very hard and you can't be that free with it because it's just too difficult to move stuff, in large quantities. So you have to be, it's not as intuitive. So whereas here I can just move stuff and it doesn't take any physical effort at all. I can do whatever I want. I can do anything. So I'm just kind of defining some shapes in his forehead here. I don't want him to be too kind of simian, like too ape-like. And so if I make too much of a ridge here, he will look too much like an ape. And I don't really want him to look too much like an ape. I did one before that looked kind of like Cousin Erie from an old comic book, which was like this kind of happy round guy. This guy's a bit more, he's not quite so happy. He's more grim. He's more of a grimace kind of a guy. Okay, and I'm going to move some more stuff again. G. Well, I like the fact that he's very not human. Make him more happy. Make his nose up. Yeah, he definitely has the Steve. If Steve Johnson is still around, Steve, the eyebrow shape is for you. Steve Johnson, late 80s type of eyebrow shape, which was sort of adapted into the Buffy the Vampire Slayer look. Buffy the Vampire Slayer was I don't know if probably no one knows what that show is unless if in high school they wouldn't know what that is, but it was a teenage monster show basically where Buffy was like a girl going to high school, and she also was she hunts monsters. So Buffy the Vampire Slayer, they all had these kind of evil brows because there's lots of vampires. And Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the brows of the vampires all kind of looked exactly the same. They were very iconic, but they also just looked like a sort of a bit of a cheap version of Steve Johnson's eyebrows. But imitation is a sincere form of flattery. So, Steve, that was for you. I worked for Steve for like, I don't know, less than a year, and so he probably has no idea who I am. So, but you know, it was a fun couple of fun year. I was young. I was young and I was stupid. Here, I'll tell the world a story. It's not much of a story, but I was kind of a shy, nervous guy, and then I was working for this guy that was my idol. This guy Steve Johnson, who invented these eyebrows, and I really was always nervous around the guy. Not because he wasn't an intimidating guy. I just was like a kind of a shy dork. And then I'm working for this guy that was like my hero, and I just always would say sort of weird things, like like weird, not inappropriate, but just like weird things that I probably shouldn't say because I was just nervous, and be sort of unintendedly being rude. Probably trying to make jokes and stuff like that, and they just being rude instead of that. And at some point, the first time I ever had a real conversation with the guy, he sat down after I started work there, and he's talking to me. I don't know what he was talking to me about, like just like a kind of a welcome to the shop kind of thing. And the whole time he was talking to me, I had like a Dremel motor tool, which is like a drill, and I'm working, and I'm kind of not looking at him. I'm just drilling my thing, and he's kind of going on quite politely. And then at some point he's like, CJ, normally people don't talk to me and use power tools at the same time. Okay, you're right. So I put down the power tool, and I probably still didn't look at him, but anyway, it was amusing. This is what happens when you're like, 20 something years old and you go to California, and you grow up real quick. Then I went back to Montreal because I didn't really like LA very much. And I still am friends with some of those guys that I work with. There was some very, very nice people. Okay, so I'm starting to have a shape as I'm not paying any attention at all what I'm doing as I'm rambling on about my time in Los Angeles, California, in Sun Valley, California, which sounds a lot nicer than it actually is. It wasn't very sunny, and it was a valley. I was in the valley, in the San Fernando Valley. And when you're a young kid and you're like, yeah, I'm going to live in Sun Valley, and you think it's going to be like this beautiful place, and it's pretty ghetto. Not ghetto, just it had no personality whatsoever. It's like Laval has more personality than that. This was like not very much personality. Plus, everyone needs a car. You can't. I don't usually have cars. Like I have a car now. My wife and I have a car, but I avoided having a car for many many years in Montreal because you don't need one. But in LA, you need one. And I tried to take the Los Angeles bus, for months, and it was a terrifying experience. And it took hours and hours and hours on the bus. Sometimes the bus never came. Sometimes the bus was being driven by people that seemed to have schizophrenia. One time the bus driver was yelling out random things to people that weren't there, which is pretty nerve-wracking when your bus driver is yelling to invisible voices and also driving at like 120 kilometers an hour. That's scary. So I bought a car because I didn't want to be killed by a psychotic bus driver. And I bought a car. The first car I ever owned, it was what was it? It was a very cheap car, like a Chevrolet something or other, and it was manual, and I didn't know how to drive manual. And I learned on the lot which meant that my clutch was killed from me slamming it so much, because when you first drive a standard car and you don't know how to drive a clutch, the tendency is just to slam the clutch out of terror all the time. And eventually the clutch physically broke off of the car on the middle of the highway, which was an interesting experience. And then, of course, the car immediately stalls because you can't drive without a clutch. So the clutch broke off of with my foot, broke the clutch off, and then the whole car stalled, and I kind of rolled off the highway in the middle of a sketchy area of Los Angeles, California. And luckily, I was not killed by any gangs. Maybe I joined a gang. Who knows? No one will ever know if I joined a gang that day. Before anything, I'm going to save this because my computer's going